Well, hi, everybody. Welcome to today's inaugural webinar. I am Craig. I work with Dental Buyer Advocates. I'm the Director of Business Development here. Just to give you a little bit of background about me and about, who's talking to you today, and then we'll get to what it is we're actually talking about. But a little bit of background. I've spent my life bouncing between lots of different careers. I've had a lot of different experiences, but for several years I did work in business banking, so I'm familiar with the lending side of what you guys have to go through purchasing a practice. I'm a business owner myself, less so these days, but I have run my own small business, so again, I kind of get that side of things as well. And I've been working with DBA for 5 years now. DBA being Dental Buyer Advocates. Now, you'll recognize the last name possibly if you're familiar with Brian Hanks. He's the one who started the company. He wrote the book that many people are familiar with and that we'll talk about. I am his, much more attractive and intelligent brother, but I've been working with him for several years now. And it's my pleasure to present some information for you today, some of which you might be familiar with, some of which might be new. But today's topic, what we're going over is the top 10 things that dentists need to know about buying a dental practice. Okay, this is our first webinar. We're going to be shooting to do these monthly, okay, but we're going to be starting kind of broadly. Okay, we'll do some 30,000 foot view stuff. There will be some very practical advice in here, but what we're not going to do is much of a deep dive on any of the topics that we get into here. However, you are welcome to jump into the chat. If you're here watching live in the audience, then jump into that chat and let me know if you have any questions as we're going. Okay, and then we can do a little bit of a deep dive here at the end in the Q&A section. But yeah, anyway, a lot of this will be fairly broad. And also, I should mention, keep an eye on your inbox after this session. I think early next week, we're going to be letting winners know. We're going to send out 5 free copies of Brian's book to those who pre-registered for this webinar. So yeah, keep an eye on that inbox next week. Now let's get going on this top 10 things that dentists need to know. I've talked to a lot of dentists, since I've been working with DBA, and there are things that, as I'm talking to you guys on the phone, there are things that I want you to know that I'm not necessarily able to get through in 15 or 20 minutes on the phone with you. But things that recur often in my conversations with dentists. So let's talk about that. Now, first of all, like I said, we're starting 30,000 foot view, very broad, and I thought we should start with a little bit of a softball here. Okay, got to butter you guys up a little bit. Here's the thing: a lot of folks that I talk to are not even sure that they're ready to purchase a practice. Okay, fair enough. Thing is, you probably are. We're going to go into a lot of different reasons why. Okay, but I say probably advisedly, okay? Because ownership, frankly, is not for everyone. Being the boss is a different thing. Going from employee or associate and stepping into that owner's role is going to be different, okay? Now, that being said, it's different, it's stressful, there's that adjustment period that you're going to have to go through, but you are, generally speaking, you buy the right practice and you are well compensated for that. So yeah, money, it's not everything. Okay, so that's not the only consideration here. There's a lot more to being a boss and being a business owner, but the money's pretty nice. We'll get to exactly what I'm talking to with some numbers here in just a moment. Now, I say probably because this isn't for everyone. Okay, we should recognize that going in. This group, however, those who are attending a webinar like this or even watching it later, you are a self-selected group, a very nicely self-selected group who, just by virtue of being here for a webinar like this, that tells me that you almost certainly will make a great business owner. Okay, so I'm not too worried about this group. However, it is still good to ask yourself, am I ready to be an owner? Again, it's not just about the money. Are you ready to take on the additional responsibility? Are you willing to go through another year or two of kind of getting used to a new role outside of that employee paradigm and getting into the ownership side of things. Now, like I said before, if the answer is yes, then you are well compensated for that, because the typical practice owner makes a whole lot more than an associate or employee, right? Um, or me for that matter. I had to put me in there, and that's as small as they would let me make that box, right? So when we're talking about associates versus owners, the thing is, if you are an associate dentist and you go through your entire career as an associate, on average, associate dentists are making, give or take, we'll say about 200,000, right? And there are going to be exceptions to that, and I've talked to a few of you exceptions out there. But we'll use that as kind of our general average here for an associate dentist, and that is not bad, right? From where I'm sitting, gosh, I'd love to make six figures, and the first one is not a one, right? That would be amazing. So if that's enough for you, that's okay. However, if you go the ownership route, you do tend to make a lot more money, especially again if you buy the right practice. So we're going to come back to that theme. But again, it's not all about the money, but the money's nice, right? All right, let's move on. Let's talk about preparation, personal preparation on this. There are a couple of things that I want to hit here. There's the loan preparation, and then there's the production or clinical preparation. All right, so talk about the loan requirements. This is something that if you've read Brian's book, you've come across this. We've put this in blog posts and podcasts and all of this. So you may have come across this list before, but learn it, memorize it, especially, you're a dental student still, or you're fresh out, you're just getting into your first job as a dentist. These are things that are good to know now, because that preparation takes time, especially on the financial side. But loan requirements, this is what the banks are going to be looking for. These are broad parameters. They're going to be a little bit different for every situation, for every doctor, for every practice. But these are our guidelines that we work with when we're kind of giving a blanket recommendation. You need to have a year of experience, okay? And you need a year of production history, right, that you can show what you've done clinically. Now, savings-wise, this is a big question that a lot of people ask. What the banks are generally going to look for is the lesser of $50K, or usually about 10% of the purchase price. That number varies a little bit by bank, but these are guidelines, right? And that 50,000 number, by the way, that is sometimes creeping up a little bit. So be aggressive with your savings. You just got out of dental school. You just got a sweet new job that's paying you, somewhere in the neighborhood of $200,000. Fantastic. Well, careful. Don't live like a king just yet. Okay. Save. Make sure that you're ready financially for ownership that way. And then on the credit side, this is one that we get a lot. What do I need credit wise? Very simple. The clean credit history basically just means no bankruptcies, right? Short sales on a home, that sort of thing. And then the credit score of 680 plus. That's a cutoff line. Okay. So when you're applying for an auto loan or, even a home loan, there are going to be variable rates depending on your credit score. It's not usually the way it works here for dental lending. This is a separator. It's a do not pass go type number, right? So if you're above 680, great. If you're below 680, work on getting that up. All right. And then on the other side, production is key. This is one that I run into in my conversations with dentists a lot. I talk to a lot of folks before they begin their practice purchase process. And this is something that we talk about a lot. If you are in an employment situation or an associateship where you're not able to do as much dentistry as you'd like, then you may want to go find a new one. Okay, you may want to find a different employment situation that is going to allow you to do as much production as possible. You want to do as much dentistry as you can. And this is actually one reason that although DSOs are not necessarily my favorite thing in the world, okay, we're being diplomatic here. But it's truthful. They're not my favorite thing in the world. They're not my least favorite thing in the world. Don't worry about that too much, DSO viewers out there. But one thing I love about them is I love DSOs for younger dentists, for dentists fresh out of school, because DSOs will absolutely, generally speaking, will absolutely work you to the bone, right? They want to extract every last bit of value they can out of you, the young, hungry dentist. And that's actually a good thing in a way, because while it may be stressful and you're working really hard, it's also upping that production history, giving you something to show the bank to get that lending and say, yeah, no problem. I can handle this practice where the doctor's producing $1 million in dentistry because I've done that before. Look at what I do for this DSO, right? But doesn't have to be that. It could be your associateship, what have you. And then lastly, find the dentistry you want to do your CE, look for a mentor, find the stuff that you like to do, that you want to do, so that when you start searching for a practice to buy, you know what kind of clinician you're targeting as a seller, right? Okay, so let's move along. Working to live. All right, the work-life balance. This one's pretty huge for dentists, because what we're aiming for, we all want that work-life balance, right? We want to work hard, but we want to be rewarded for it. We want our leisure time. We want all of the, the toys, whatever your goals are for yourself. Now, if you want that work-life balance, yes, you should buy a practice, okay? But you should buy the right practice. Let's start on that first concept. You want to buy a practice. Well, you're an owner now, right? Isn't that more stressful? Aren't you tilting that balance more toward the work side instead of the life side? Not necessarily. And you guys know this intuitively. I'm not telling you anything that you don't know, because you all know those owner dentists out there who have been at it for 10, 20, 30 years. And pretty soon they're like, yeah, I can run my practice and make my money working 3 days a week, right? That's a pretty sweet gig. And it's not quite as simple as that, obviously, but there is something to that, where once you get going in your career, you are going to be, as an owner, more able to set your hours, to have the vacation schedule you want. All of those things that contribute to a work-life balance much easier as an owner. Now, that being said, it's going to be a lot easier to achieve that work-life balance if you buy the right practice, right? So practice A is collecting 500K, practice B is collecting $1 million, right? Okay, so that's twice as much. What are you taking home as the owner of that, right? That is going to contribute a lot to your stress levels. What is this doing for your life? What is your work doing for your life side of that equation? Buy the right practice, and you're going to be looking a lot less stressed after a few years of ownership. So what do we recommend here at Dental Buyer Advocates? What is the right practice to help you achieve your financial goals, lower your stress levels, all of that? Well, the typical practice, let's use nice round numbers. This is not the actual number, but let's say that we assume a 40% profit for your typical practice. It should be, on average, a little bit less than that, but we'll use that as our average here. If the practice is taking in 500K, then you're taking home, using that very, very simplistic equation, you're taking home 200K. All right. Again, not bad, but now you're making the same thing you were as an associate with the added stresses of ownership. All right, so now we've got the $1 million practice, twice as much. Yeah, you're taking home twice as much, 400K. So what do we recommend at DBA? Our typical minimum recommended number is 800,000. So at 800,000, I think the number is 320 is what you're taking home. Don't ask me to do math live. That's always a losing proposition, right? But that number typically means that it's a healthy practice, it's got good systems, it's going to be good for you long term, and it's going to make ownership worthwhile for you monetarily. So that's what that means for us here. Now, you want to find that right practice, but how do you do that? This is, generally speaking, the hardest step for most dentists that we talk to. Usually, I actually talked to somebody earlier this week, and I was laughing with them because I often say this: hey, this is the hardest step in the process. You're not going to have a practice fall into your lap. I talked to somebody that did happen for, so I know it happens, but it's very, very rare. All right, so how are you going to find a good practice to buy? This is one slide here that deserves its own webinar, and it is going to get its own webinar. Okay, so if this is the topic that you are most interested in, hang around, because this is obviously a hot topic, and we do want to address that. So I'll just kind of skim over what we have here today as far as the best way to find a practice to buy. We recommend something called the 80-20 rule. All right, so the 80-20 rule goes like this. When you are looking for a practice to buy, spend 80% of your search time building your network with other dentists. Spend 20% of your search time working with brokers. All right, so here's what that means. Building your network simply means having a group of dentists, preferably in your target area, that know you, that like you, that know you're looking for a practice to buy, and who would either sell to you or recommend that somebody else sell to you. Okay, so that's all that means. You're not making best friends. You're not looking for weekly golf buddies or anything like that. This is your network of other dental professionals. All right, so how do you build that? Yeah, you can stay in touch with your classmates, go to your CE events, do the glad handing thing and all of that. There are a million different ways you can build your network. But one thing I want to talk about is mailers. If you've read Brian's book or you've listened to the podcast, you've heard about this. But this is one of those things where, the younger brother looks at what the older brother wrote and goes, dang it, he was absolutely right. It always hurts a little bit, right? But he's right. So when dentists come to me and they say, I'm having such a hard time, I can't find a practice to buy, none of the practices out there are any good, I always know the answer to my next question, which is, are you looking through brokers or are you looking through your network of other dentists? And they always say brokers. There are reasons for this, and I would encourage you to grab your phone, pull out your phone, scan the QR code, and download the How to Find a Practice guide that we have. It's a PDF that's pretty extensive, and it'll go into some of this stuff, some of the details of what I'm talking about. But basically, if somebody's only looking through brokers, they're finding practices that are hitting the market because nobody else bought them yet. The 80%, you're building your network. You're trying to build a network of folks who know you're looking to buy, so that when someone has an inkling that, yeah, they're ready to sell, then your name comes up. They haven't even called a broker yet to list the practice, right? They were just talking to to somebody in their network, maybe playing golf, and they say, yeah, I'm thinking about retiring. I think it's about that time. I just need to find somebody to buy the practice. And then their friend says, well, I know this woman got in touch with me, and I know she's looking for a practice to buy. So you should reach out to this doctor. She'd be great, right? That's how that networking works. So that great practice finds its way to you before it finds its way to the market. This happens all the time. And so by the time you see something listed on these brokers' websites, and this isn't a blanket rule, right? But by the time you see it there, it's because nobody else has purchased the practice yet. Sometimes there's a great reason for that. Other times it's a fantastic practice and really worth looking at. But that brings me, actually, no, I'll save the 100-0 idea for just a moment. The last thing I want to talk about is mailers. That's going to be a huge part of this this PDF that you can download. Again, hit the QR code, use your phone, and download that PDF. Mailers, I get a lot of eye rolls, and I can hear the eye rolls when I talk to you guys over the phone. I can hear them. So I get a lot of eye rolls like, oh my gosh, everybody hates mailers. They don't work. How can you make this suggestion? Well, sorry to tell you, but they do work. They're actually a fantastic way to reach out and start building that network in your target area. So do not discount the idea of mailers. There are mass mailers, there are targeted mailers. They have different strengths and weaknesses, but you can learn more about those in that PDF. Now, with all of this being said, this is another thing that I often tell folks on the phone. We call it the 80-20 rule for a reason. It's not the 100-0 rule. And that's because working with brokers, not a waste of your time. Like I was saying before, oftentimes you will see that something pops up and it does look fantastic. Well, great. That broker has a fantastic practice to sell. That does happen. and you want to get in line for those. So it's not a waste of your time to reach out to brokers, to check their listings on a weekly basis, that sort of thing. So yeah, keep your eyes out in both ways. The 80-20 rule. All right. Now, once you have found a possible practice, you go out, you meet the seller, you're looking at the production history of the practice, whatever it is. Um, do not expect to find a practice that lines up exactly with how you like to operate. Expect to find something with some overlap, a really big amount of overlap. Uh, okay, so we're looking for 80% overlap. This is what the banks are looking for when it comes to a lot of these factors when they're deciding whether it's going to be a good fit that'll work out, and they want to issue that loan. This is one of the things they're looking at. Hand speed, clinical philosophy, and management style. You do not need to line up 100%. However, if that Venn diagram is really separated, then it could be more of a problem. So you want a decent overlap as far as stepping into a practice that does the procedures you want to do, that has the management style that you want, all of that sort of thing. Okay, I think we can move past this one pretty quick and talk more about banks. All right, banks, dreaded banks. This is everybody's favorite topic. No, they shouldn't be, because a good banker is worth their weight in gold. You obviously need that loan unless you've got a spare $1,000,000 laying around. But it's a bit of a gauntlet, right? That loan process, and so people tend to, get a little anxious when they start thinking about loans, and that's fair enough. But I do think that banks, while they are a gatekeeper, they are a useful one. All right, let's talk about the banks a little bit. They're not technically on your team. What does it mean to be on your team? We're going to talk more about that in just a moment. But basically what this means is the banks, they love you, dentists, genuinely. They love lending to you guys. They want to lend to you. But that doesn't mean that they're on your team, because these bankers, the underwriters, all of these folks are looking out for the bank's best interests. That being said, that overlaps with your interest as well, right? So yeah, they're protecting their investment, but that protects you as well. So when you have a bank that's looking at a potential deal, and they look at a practice and they say, here's a few things about this that are making me nervous, that should perk your ears up a little bit. It's not necessarily a deal breaker, right? But what the bank sees is valuable information for you as a potential buyer. So use them that way, right? Now, who do you target? We have a bias toward the big banks, and we think that you should too. The reason for that is essentially that the larger banks out there, the national banks, they're going to have more resources. They have, generally speaking, more experienced bankers who work on dental all the time, right? This is a big sector for them. And so you just have more resources, better bankers who have seen more. They know how to help you make exceptions and get creative with the loan and help you make that deal happen. That doesn't mean that smaller banks and regional banks are never able to do those things, but it's much more likely with the larger banks. So you should have a bias toward those big banks. That being said, it matters who you talk to. Not just the bank, but the banker themselves. In fact, in a lot of ways, it matters more who the banker is rather than which bank it is that you're going through. Take that one with a grain of salt, and we'll get to grains of salt in just a moment. But yeah, the banker matters big time. So what if you're exploring this idea of ownership and you want to talk to somebody about a potential loan? So you look up, the biggest guys out there, Bank of America. So you look up Bank of America, dental lending, they have a phone number, you give them a call. You don't know who's going to pick up that phone, but whoever picks up that phone is now the assigned banker to your deal. I'm simplifying the process a little bit here, but essentially that's how it works, is the first banker you talk to is going to be the one assigned to your loan. Now, these bigger banks, they have lots of folks doing dental lending, and so you want the best bankers at each bank rather than kind of rolling the dice and hoping that you get a good one. So with that in mind, if you want an introduction to the best bankers out there, just let us know. Okay, I'm going to leave this up for just a moment so you can pull out your phones uh, and scan that QR code. Again, that's just it'll be a few fields, your name, phone, email address, that sort of thing, but also a little bit of information about your specialty and whether you've talked to any banks already, that sort of thing. And that'll help us to know who to possibly direct you towards. So if you are looking for that conversation, then absolutely reach out to us. We're happy to put you in touch with the right bankers. This is something that we feel so strongly about that we're happy to make those introductions, even if you're not a client of ours yet. So let us know, and we'll put you in touch with bankers that have a proven track record that we've worked with, that we know how to make deals happen for you. Okay. All right. Oh, last thing here, by the way, this is good because I'll be able to leave this up for just another moment. I was talking with a banker a few months ago, and I said, how early is too early for somebody to reach out to you? Do you get annoyed when you get a call from a D3, or a D2 or something? And the banker said, it is literally never too early for me to talk with them. So let that reassure you a little bit, okay? Now, you do want to talk to them the right way, right? You don't want to annoy the bankers. You don't want to annoy anybody, right? So how do you talk to the bankers the right way, especially if you're really early in the process? It's simple. Respect their time and have your questions ready. Have an itinerary have a purpose for the call, a clear purpose, and don't waste their time, right? You've got questions. Hey, here's my situation. What do I need to do to prepare? Tell me about your savings requirements, all those sorts of things. Have your questions ready, get in and out, but introduce yourself and make that connection. It's really valuable to do. All right. So I mentioned grains of salt. As you are going through this process, you're thinking about ownership and you want to, let's see. Yeah. You're looking around online, you're getting advice from your friends. You're reaching out to brokers. You're going to get a lot of stuff coming your way, right? So gather your information, but always consider the source. All right, now caution. I think that's supposed to be the yellow light, but whatever. It makes sense. Okay, just roll with me on this one. All right, so there's a couple places where you want to have a lot of caution. Now, red doesn't mean stop, or these can be valuable sources of information sometimes. Especially, online forums, these are one-off stories. Somebody says, well, I had a terrible experience working with, Acme Bank or whatever. So don't go with them. Well, you don't know which banker they worked with. You don't know what happened on their deal. You don't know how they treated the banker. You don't know how any of those details. And so when you're getting, Facebook groups and forums and whatnot, they can be great sources of information and bouncing ideas off each other. Just make sure that you use caution when you are considering info from a source like that. Same thing with brokers. The broker works for the seller. They don't work for you, right? You're not paying them. The seller is paying them, and they're working on commission on getting this deal done. Getting a deal done as high a price as possible, right, to up their commission. Now, you're going to get info from brokers about the practice. They're going to tell you about the practice. I am not trying to tell you to disregard what bankers say, what brokers are telling you. It's just you want to take it with a grain of salt and consider the source, right? So, is it true that that this doctor has only worked 3 days a week for the last 10 years? You're going to have a really easy schedule if you step into this practice. Maybe that might be true. Or the one that kills me the most is when a potential buyer calls a broker and they say, I'm interested in learning more about this practice. And the broker says, okay, well, there are 5 other people who are submitting offers this week, so you better hurry. I hate that one just because maybe it might be true, right? It might be true if it's a really desirable practice, or it might be a hurrying tactic to get you to put in an offer as quickly as possible. Anyway, so again, this doesn't make brokers the bad guys or anything like that. You just want to consider the source there, consider that info that you're getting with the grain of salt. Now, Next rung up, folks who are not on your team. The banker, we've talked about the banker and how they work for the bank, not you. So their info is extremely valuable, but it's coming from a certain angle, right? They're protecting their investment, not necessarily considering everything about you and your side of the deal, right? So a little bit smaller grain of salt there, right? And then the seller would fit into this bucket as well, I think. The seller wants to sell their practice. And so, a little bit along broker lines that way, right? I want to sell the practice. I want to present it in as good a light as possible. Totally fair, right? If you've ever gone through an experience selling a car or a home or something like that, we've all done this, right? You want to present it in as good a light as possible. Totally fair. Absolutely, from the seller's perspective. The other thing is, a lot of sellers, they may not know the answers to some of the questions that you want answered as a potential buyer. Not every seller, not every practice owner is really invested in the time or in the day-to-day of their practices. I see a lot where the seller doesn't even know what their expenses are. They just say, hey, I've got a bookkeeper, the accountant, they take care of it. I don't even look. I just, get my check deposited into my account every month and I don't worry about it. So they may not know some of the answers to your questions, right? Now, when it comes to who you can trust for information and advice and all of that, again, consider the source, right? So who are the folks who are on your team? And what's the difference between them and, the banker and the seller? Your lawyer and your CPA are fiduciarily, that's a word, right? They have a fiduciary responsibility to you. What that means is you're paying them directly to have your best interests in mind, whether it's on the number side for the CPA or on the legal side for the attorney. They are on your team and they are legally required to give you the best advice that they know how to give, right? So those are going to be your most trusted sources of info. All right. Now, as you start to move into business ownership, and these are our last 3 tips, by the way, so we're getting close, guys. All right. As you're moving into business ownership, you're going to find that you're no longer a dentist first. You're now a business owner first and a dentist second, which is not such a bad thing. That doesn't mean that you're going to, have to hang up your handpiece or anything like that. It just means that that your mindset needs to shift toward ownership and how do you run this business, keep it healthy, and keep folks in it happy, right? Whether it's patients, staff, yourself, right? So how do you become a successful business owner as a dentist? The good news is the deck is very much stacked on your side, right? So you have a running start because of your clinical experience, because frankly, because you're a dentist. And I haven't yet met a dentist who isn't smart enough to run a business, right? You guys are all incredibly intelligent and capable and disciplined. Oh, disciplined. That's why I don't do what you do. I don't have the discipline. But that being said, you don't have to be an expert on running a business. You just need to know some of the basics, right? And pay attention. And you can hire other people to be experts in the areas where you don't really want to become expert, right? So go out, read some books, get into some podcasts, join some forums on business ownership, right? So you could go dental specific. You may not know, Brian has a second volume of How to Buy a Dental Practice that's all about transitioning into that ownership role, right? So that's going to be dental specific. But you can also look into money management, understanding your numbers. You don't have to become an accountant, but you can and should understand the basics, right? Or the Effective Manager, that's a fantastic book about how to manage people. You're now going to be a boss. You'll have a staff. And how do you manage them? How do you hire? How do you fire? How do you provide feedback or discipline or whatever the case may be? How do you handle raise conversations? Those sorts of things are now going to be incredibly important to you. And if you learn literally anything about running a business and implement those things, then you will be the best dentist in town. It's not very hard to do. Most dentists are not going to do it. They're just going to coast and hope. But if you learn anything about running a business, you're going to get a huge head start. and you'll be one of the best dentists around. So, all right. Now, I want to talk about this one. The longer you wait, the more you lose. This one sounds more, it sounds a little sales pitchy because this is what we do. We help dentists to buy practices. And so, there's that grain of salt, right? But I really do mean this. And we've got Brian here who's going to explain why. The longer you wait, the more you lose. If you wait for ownership until later in your career, well, let's find out what happens here. All right.
The average dental practice owner makes
Oh.
about $150,000 more per year than the average associate. $150,000 over a 30-year career, $4.5 million. But that does not take into account interest. Through the power of compound interest, at a measly 5% rate of return, that $150,000 spread over a 30-year career actually turns out to be $11,112,409.84. Owning a dental practice is not solely about the money, but it's helpful to know what the difference in your lifetime earnings could be if you own your practice versus work as an associate for your entire career.
All right, so we talked earlier about practice owners making more than associates, right? A lot more. And the numbers Brian was using, we made this video several years ago, at least 2 or 3 years ago. And so I think even these are a little bit out of date, and it's probably even starker now than it was then. But anyway, but the point remains, right? That the earlier you start, the earlier you're going to begin paying down your student loans, as well as that practice loan, and starting to build real wealth. Now, this is huge, right? Because I spoke with somebody actually just yesterday. I wonder if they're here in the live webinar. But I spoke with somebody yesterday who was buying or looking into purchasing from a dentist who was retiring in their mid 50s. It sounded like early to mid 50s, something like that. And she was calling saying, gosh, I'm not sure if this is a good practice. We'll have to, do our due diligence. And yes, absolutely. We got to do the due diligence. But I told her, that's incredibly exciting to me because that practice made that doctor enough money that he's now retiring, 10 years, 15 years ahead of schedule, ahead of the average, right? That sounds like a pretty promising practice to me, right? So that's, you step into the right practice, you do it early, and you could be that doctor retiring in your 50s and kind of sailing off into the sunset, right? All right. Lastly, this one. Okay, we started on the butter you up. Let's end on another butter you up guide here, or a slide. I mean, you are readier than you think. We've talked about all these things that you need to do to prepare, the things you need to consider, the ways you need to ready yourself and your bank accounts and your clinical history and all of that. It's all incredibly important. And you're probably on top of a lot more of that stuff than you thought when you started this whole process of looking into ownership. It seems daunting, but as I was saying earlier, you're dentists and you're awesome at what you do. You're a lot more ready than you think you are. Now you're going to feel a lot of, excitement and nervousness. And what happens when you put those together? It's a lot of energy, right? This is an exciting time in your career, purchasing a practice. And so you're never going to feel 100% confident going in, right? You think about going to college or getting married or having a kid or going to dental school for that matter. You go into it really nervous and really excited, and then you get there and you go, oh, wow, I actually can do this. I wasn't prepared. There's nobody who's prepared to become a parent, right? But then once you reach that step, you realize, okay, I am a lot more prepared than I thought that I was. Think of it this way. If you're ever nervous about practice ownership, think back to your graduating class at dental school, right? Think about the person from your class, and I know there is one, okay? Don't pretend there's not. Think about the person who you would least want to touch your teeth from your graduating class. And think about the fact that they can, and they might already be running a great practice themselves and making that ownership money and feathering their nest that way. Running their career, having control over their own work life balance, all of that. If they can do it, you can as well. And, kind of like I was saying at the top of this whole webinar, your presence here tells me that you're not the worst dentist in your class. Okay, guaranteed. So you can do it. If you have an inkling that you want to own a practice, that you can absolutely do it, and we'll be honored to help you do so here at Dental Buyer Advocates. So again, a reminder of some of the resources that you can get from us. These were in previous slides, but if you wanted to hit a couple of those, we've got the banker referrals, the find a practice PDF. Okay, so that's a guide to how you can find a practice to buy. And then finally, the book. If you go to dentalbuyeradvocates.com, you can snag that book for $10. It's 20 on Amazon. It's 10 if you buy it from our website. We'll just ship it directly to you. And then lastly, I will mention again, like I did at the top of the show, the top of the webinar show, that we're going to give away a few copies of the book. So five copies of the book we'll give out for free to folks who pre-registered for this webinar. So keep an eye out next week in your email inbox for that. And now we're going to do a Q&A with Dr. Donna Ford. I'm going to give her a moment to join in. So now that we've wrapped that up, if you guys have questions, you want to put those in the live stream chat. So look on the right side of your screen if you are watching live, and you can throw your questions in there. Dr. Donna Fort is with us. Hi, Donna. How are you?
Good. Hi, Craig. Nice to see you.
So, Donna, before we get to questions and answers that we want to go over, I'll just ask you, I believe you were watching, I'm sure, extremely attentively the entire time, right? Anything that I missed or holes, gaps that you'd want to fill with the information that I presented? Anything jump out that you'd want to add to?
Well, the big thing you mentioned, we want to find a practice that makes enough money, but the other part of it is we want a practice that keeps money too. So that's the part where really looking at the numbers becomes so important. Because if you have a practice that's collecting $800,000, but their expenses are $700,000, that's a big problem, and we do
Right.
see that. So you want to make sure you're looking at those profit and loss statements, and you want to have from day one an idea about expenses, because when you are an owner, that's a very big part of your business.
Yeah, absolutely. It feels so, or it can feel so mercenary sometimes, right? Like, oh, it's all about the dollar signs. Well, it's not. And I hope I made that point earlier that, like, if you buy, as you're saying, if you buy a practice with good collections and sky high expenses, you're buying into stress,
That's
right?
right.
And so whether it's work life balance or just like happiness in the office, that sort of thing, it's we talk about money and it goes beyond just those dollar signs, right? It
Well,
affects you.
it's also showing us, we typically see practices that have a hold on expenses. They're really good at ordering supplies. The staff
Hmm.
all get along. The patients like to come back. So there's really a lot that the numbers will tell us just about the overall health of the practice in general.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. All right, so we've got this one here. We kind of talked about this a little bit already. How much cash do I really need to buy a practice? I hear different things. So I talked about this earlier. I hope this question got answered, and watch me give this a shot. Dr. Bulgakova. So I'm going to hope that I can pat myself on the back for that one. So hopefully we answered this one, but how much cash do I really need to buy a practice? Donna, correct me if I'm wrong, the lesser of 50K or 10% of the purchase price as a rule,
Uh,
right?
right. But each bank is a little bit different. So
Exactly.
some banks will want between 5 and 7% of, the practice purchase price somewhere in your bank account. Other banks, it's the more conservative ones, they're between 7 and 10. Now, what that means, it doesn't mean a down payment. They just want to see that you are responsible with money and you have cash somewhere so that if there's an emergency that you can make a payment.
Yeah.
So, one question we get a lot is, what do I do if I don't have that amount of money? And,
Um,
that does come up. So, what I tell people, it's very common. This is not a secret. A lot of people just ask their family. So they'll say, "Hey, mom and dad, brother, friend, can I borrow money for 3 days?" And around the time, around
it's amazing. Yeah.
yep, around the time of buying the practice, they'll ask the banker, "When do I have to have the money in my account?" They'll transfer it in, and then they'll transfer it out.
Yep.
Banks are well aware of this. Again, it's just showing them that you have a way to get cash in case there's an emergency.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the key there. I think you talked about it's not a down payment, it's a signal to the bank. And it's a rainy day fund for yourself, right? It's not
Yeah.
just a signal. And so, well, if I'm borrowing from my family members and I'm sending it back to them 3 days later, well, that's not a rainy day fund. But the point is, what you're saying is, when those rainy days do hit, if they do, you have a backstop. You have a support system, and the bank is confident that you're not going to default the moment you run into trouble, right? Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely correct.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. And that's the thing about, if I can just stay on the banker point for a moment. I know I kind of hit this one pretty hard, but talking to the right banker is really important, because an inexperienced, or, dare I say, even a bad banker is not going to know how to be creative, how to find the solutions for you. Oh, you don't fit the criteria perfectly? Well, the bad banker says, sorry, you're not approved. Move along. But the good banker says, okay, well, you don't fit the parameters that we're typically looking for, but let's see what we can do to get you as close as possible, make some exceptions for you. Those experienced, really good bankers are, like I said earlier, worth their weight in gold, right?
Absolutely. And they'll help you plan out like your goals for the future. So if you tell them, "Hey, I want to buy a house," sometimes they'll say, "Hey, we have a program where we can offer you doctor financing where without a down payment for your home, or they'll help
Hmm.
you with that timing, or, so a really good banker, I think, like you said, just makes a huge difference."
So we've talked about the numbers side, the financial side, but I want to talk to you about the clinical side, Dr. Fort, because you owned your own practice. You're a clinician for how long? How long did you practice?
It was about 17 years.
Okay.
Oh,
And how long did you own?
it was about 12 years.
Okay. So talk to me about when you purchased your practice. You remember the slide with the 80% overlap, right? Did you buy a practice that was 100% overlap, or was it close but not that close, and you had some learning to do once you stepped in?
Well, I bought into a partnership with my father. So with that, there's a lot
Nice.
that goes into it.
Hmm.
So were we 80%? I think that's really hard, but you know, we are family, so we were aligned.
There you go. Yeah. Well, that's something that not all partnerships are going to have to fall back on, right?
Yeah.
The family connection.
Yep.
And so you'll want to have, I guess, a family connection can survive a little bit less overlap even than what we'd typically be looking for. Is that fair?
It depends on your relationship with your family. How about that?
Okay. Yeah. Fair enough. Fair enough. Absolutely. And then, how is it different to practice dentistry, the actual, hand and mouth practicing dentistry as an associate or an employee versus an owner? Uh, yeah. Tell me about the difference there.
It's really your mindset. You think about what you're doing day to day in such a different way. When I was an associate, I would just kind of do my own thing, go home, not think about anything. Now, as an owner, you're thinking, okay, well, how can I do what's in the best interest of the patient? Like, quadrant dentistry kind of is the best interest in the patient. Do what you can so that, you get everything done in one visit versus three. But it also
Yeah.
has you in that mindset of production and growth. And now you care if there's missing supplies,
Yeah.
or, you just, as an associate, you don't really think about it, but as an owner, you think in a different way, and you just care a lot more about the business side of things.
Suddenly you've got some serious skin in the game, and Yeah, I mean, I don't have a ton to add onto that, but it's, I guess, think about for anybody in the audience who's watching who has gone through home ownership, right? You go from renter to owner, and your relationship to your living space changes like that. How you think about it, how you treat it, what you're willing to do to maintain it, all of that stuff is right. Is that's a pretty good parallel?
It is. And, being there, you're more prepared than you think. You're, as an associate, you're already talking to your staff every day. You're
Hmm.
already working with your assistant. You're doing that anyway. You still have to care if did they bill out the procedures? So I would say, don't be so afraid. You can handle it. If you can do molar endo, which you guys all have in school, you can handle this.
Fun fact: I cannot handle molar endo. So, congratulations! Hats off to all of you folks who are so intelligent and disciplined that you can handle molar endo. I can't. So, good job. But that being said, what I can do is I can help people prepare themselves, understand their options. I can help people to kind of take a glance at a practice. If you've got something that you're interested in, then I'm interested in helping you figure out if dental buyer advocates can assist you with your dream. Basically, can we get you into the practice of your dreams? So if you have if you would like to reach out, I've got my info at the bottom of every card here. You've seen it there, so you can email me directly, craig@dentalbuyeradvocates.com. Reach out, say hi. I'd love to begin a dialogue with you. And if you do want to schedule a call, if you've got something in mind, or if you're stuck, right? Yeah, I don't have a practice in mind, but I need to know what my next step is. I'm a little bit stuck. Where do I go from here? Then you can schedule a call. Just go to dentalbuyeradvocates.com/contact us. If you do that, you'll find my calendar there. I am happy to take 20, 30 minutes and talk through your situation, see what I can do to help. And then Donna, you're the next one up. If they find a practice that's worth digging into, you're going to be one of the ones helping them out.
Yeah, well, we believe, we're here to help you. So even if you're not a client, we believe, you should put out good things in the world. So don't hesitate to reach out if you have a question. If we can offer a resource or point you in the right direction, we'd be happy to do so.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks everybody for participating. Thanks for coming. And like I said at the beginning, we are shooting to do these monthly. So keep it top of mind. Watch out for the emails letting you know that the next one is coming up. We'll let you know what the topic is, what the date and time is. But for now, this was fantastic. I appreciate everybody joining in for our first webinar. Dr. Fort, thank you as well.
Yeah, nice to see you, Craig.
Okay. Bye, everybody.
Everyone.